told about because we knew it and thought it was about to become public. And if it was true, we didn't know whether it was true, it would be important to let him know this as part of a defensive briefing.
While we're on the subject of the dossier, by the time you left, how much of it do you think you were able to either prove to be correct, verify, or debunk?
The work was still underway. I wouldn't be able to say anyway if I was still there, but the work was still underway when I was fired.
Some of it, is it fair to say that some of it you verified as true and some of it you debunked as false?
I think that all I can say is a core part of it was consistent with lots of other intelligence, core part of it being the Russians are engaged in an orchestrated campaign to influence the American election.
The Michael Cohen, I want to ask you about him. He's now under.
This is the personification of a true American hermaphrodite. He's not Hermes. He's not Aphrodite. He's not a man. He's not a woman. He's not a cop. He's not a lawyer. He's not a citizen. This guy is a complete and utter danger and psychopath. All I got to do is look at this guy's face to know what a weasel he is. He's androgynous to the point of amorphous. And his physiognomy bespeaks that. Tall, slender men of a feminine quality. Let me quote Shakespeare, Cassius has but a hungry stare. So this psychopath who keeps blowing himself up decides it's his jurisdiction and his job as FBI director to decide who's morally fit to be the president of the United States. And while I always said that moral turpitude is something that we should demand from our leaders, especially in the case of Clinton, so as not to sound hypocritical as a conservative Christian American, I will tell you I find Trump's personal private behavior despicable. Being in the meat market, and it's also why I despise American women in general as a species. They stand up for female rights, but they qualify themselves by what is between their legs, as if that's germane. They sell themselves readily for upward mobility and dress that way for the most part. Not all women, of course, but too many in this country. One day they're cheesecake, and the next day they don't want you looking at them. They get jobs as anchor people because, why, they're ugly? Is there a female version of Edward R. Murrow or Walter Cronkite? Not really. I mean, look at the women on Fox News. The first criteria hiring a woman is she's got to be good looking. From Jane Pauley to just rattle them off. The men are allowed to be ugly. The women have to be eye catchers for the most part. I'm not talking about Pee Wee Herman Maddow on a channel like NBC that nobody watches. But the bigger point is the duplicity here. And this rat bastard can condemn Trump. But what does that mean? Hillary is the exemplar case of moral, proper behavior? Or her dirtbag husband who was stooping interns, which is a felony? And in a private company, not only would you get your pants sewed off, but you'd be terminated? But see, if you work for the government, you could rape Girl Scouts and you don't lose your pension. You could be the greatest gangster in the world. We worry about Trump talking to Russians. And this jackass Comey just said he's never heard him condemn Vladimir Putin, either privately or publicly. Well, he slapped more sanctions on the Russians and Vladimir Putin than the last 10 presidents combined, you jerk off. But you were awful passive to the point of a mummy while Hillary sold uranium with your buddy Robert Mueller. Listen, pal, you're fugazi. Everything about you, Comey, is an expose that you are a puppet for the deep state. You are a hitman, is what you are. You were hired to take down Trump. And the only reason why you brought up the evidence on Hillary late in the election cycle, because you, like every other government rat, thought it was a cakewalk and she was a shoo-in. So that was a CYA move. Cover your ass, which is what the government does. For all your ineptitude, most of the conspiracies that I would affix to the government are the cover-ups for just what a bunch of imposter bums you are. So we have kids separated from their families by the government, like the CIA who started Ms. Magazine and the women's lib movement, because the government wanted double taxation on every household. And that's the truth. And the CIA was the benefactor for Gloria Steinem. Look it up. Don't believe me. And you created these monsters, especially these children. We feminized the schools because all the teachers are mostly female. And they don't like dealing with aggressive young boys. So they pump them up with Ritalin. And by the time they hit puberty, they're ready for opioids. And then they take guns and they go try to find justice. And these mental defectives are to tell guys like me that I ought not have a gun to protect myself from the very werewolves that they've created. You know, look under every disaster in the last 35, 40 years. Whether it's 9/11, I don't care where you look, Waco, Ruby Ridge, Fast and Furious. These gangsters, these psychopaths have no equal in history. I mean, you want to go read Richard III. Go read about Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Marcus Aurelius, Edward II, Henry VIII. The intrigue and diabolical behavior of governments is replete in history. I've studied it all my life, and now in my 62nd year on the planet, here's what I deduce. It's all bullshit. Inevitably, we have a short time on this planet. Do not subjugate yourself to these psychopaths. Government is best that governs least because there's less of them. I'm a conservative for that reason only, above all. Okay? Because I want less Comey rats in my life.